Good morning, soul rebels. Totally with a cause. Nobody in their right mind would get up this early unless they were a rebel with a cause. So thank you so much, my dears. You know, it's quite a journey we've been on for some years, coming on and listening and absorbing the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and through the commentary of Paramahansa Yogananda. Wow. I would love to see the place in the higher realms that each of you are going to go to just because of this effort. And Denny for coming on, same thing, just amazing. Uh, we're actually on verses 14 to 17 on page 999, just in case you have. Hello, look at him, Brookie. Look at Brooke, come on. Such a loyal devotee of everything beautiful. How is that? How would you like to be a devotee of everything beautiful, my dears? You know, everything that's kind, everything that just lifts your energy. So you're just, you're calmly active and actively calm, says Yogananda. Calmly active and actively calm. Just this perfect balance within yourself that you can just feel like no matter what's going to happen today in our world, what's going to happen in our inner world, whatever, that it's going to be just perfect. Yeah. So welcome to Bhagavad Gita. We're going to, I just want to bring your attention to the bottom of 999, 999, 999, because there's something that Yogananda says. Of course, you could say that almost anything he says has some truth, if not the whole truth, nothing but the truth in it. But it says at the bottom of 999, because we're on these verses 14 to 17. And specifically, we were on the 14 is about the veneration of the devas. So that's all that high sattva, mental austerity where you're just choosing select, like you live, you're in a market, and let's say you deliver your goods to the market, some luscious fruits, and you just take the select because they only want the select. They only want the A grade of what you have to offer. And it's the same thing here, what Yogananda is offering. But I want to read to you this last sentence on page 999. But the yogi who not only guides aright her and his external actions, it's one thing to deal with our external life, right? It's another thing to deal with the internal one. So not only guides their external actions, but also through meditation works from within. And this is what gets me. Works from within at the source of behavior. Wow. In other words, that could mean a lot. That could mean a lot. That if we have issues with our behavior, external, or our behavior, and Yogananda says the worst thing that can happen is that we're not willing to meditate. But he understands. But he understands, right? The love is unceasing. This is just unceasing no matter what we say or do, where we think we're at or not. Okay? So let's get that crystal clear. But it is an interesting thought, I think, that meditating, you're calm, you're introspecting, you're going inside because we know that's where the divine indweller is, the essence of spirit is inside us, that it influences 100% our behavior. So thanks for getting that little meditation in, my dears, whenever you can, because it's influencing your outer behavior and vice versa. Your outer behavior, would also influence whether you're willing or wanting to meditate or not, right? So it all works together. But who meditates and works from within at the source of behavior quickly and naturally transforms herself quickly and naturally. Transforms herself, acquiring those virtues of body and speech. We're going to jump right into what Yogananda says about that virtue of speech, because we kind of talked about the body mind scenario last week. But naturally and quietly acquiring those virtues of body, speech, and mind that characterize the sattvic devotee, the one who's spiritualizing her life as best she can, right? Dealing with everything, and then no one can be in your moccasins, only you can then figure it out, but not figuring it out, but hanging in there tough, hanging on to the to Divine Mother's garment. Mother, lift me up. Uppy, uppy, oh my mother divine. I want uppy, uppy, oh my mother divine, right? Lift me up into your arms and hold me tight. Lift me up into your arms and hold me tight. I want uppy, uppy, oh my mother divine. Yeah, that kind of devotee, the sattvic devotee that always wants uppy, right? So we talked about the worship to the, did you remember what the twice born represents? The gurus. It represents the gurus. So we have just this unbelievable, pure worshiping that we talked about last week. But now, today, we're in the middle of page 1,000. Yeah, we're on page 1,000, right in the middle. And this is what it says. Speech, because we're going to look at speech, how we're going to spiritualize speech. Speech, Yogananda says, I always like his take. Do you? You know who your true guru is if you always like their take, meaning whatever it is that they say, you kind of resonate with. There's nothing that ever he has said that I was bugged by. If I was bugged, it was because it's so true that it's like, whoa, I got to deal with that now. I got to change that and that, right? But it wasn't because of anything else that wasn't in sync with my character, my habits, my life, my purpose, and all that. It's always been amazing what he says. So let's see what he says about speech and the purification and the spiritualization of speech. Speech is an extremely powerful faculty, he says, Narayan, conveying not only ideas, right? Because everyone's full of ideas and opinions, but empowering them, conveying not only ideas, but empowering those ideas with the creative force of the Om vibration. The Om vibration. Boy, anything that has the Om vibration in it is going to take you home, home to this place where we're talking about everything's balanced. Everything is just humming, humming with life force, humming with the love force, humming with the peace force, humming with joy. So that faculty of speech is extremely powerful, conveying not only ideas, but empowering those ideas with the creative force of O. So just remember that. I mean, there's so much to remember, right? But what if every time before you said a word, you just kind of whisper or internally do an Om before you said something? I wonder, I wonder how that would work, Narayan and Lisa and Jim. What do you think? You think that's an okay idea? I know there's lots to do. There's nothing have tos or shoulds here, but I'm just saying, if you want to empower your speech with a creative force, just mentally chant Om before you say the next word or the next sentence. Interesting idea. I just came up with it. Well, no, I didn't come up with it. Yogananda's maybe hinting at it, empowering them, those words, that faculty of speech with the own vibration. And what is that? What is the own vibration? The source of all creativity, my dears, and its manifestation of sound, including the human voice. So Om has a sound like an ocean roar, we could say, or like a wind, depending on what your internal listening capacities are, depending. Yogananda says the full potential of speech, the full potential of speech is a unique endowment bequeathed by God to man. That's another thing. Be grateful that we can talk or we do sign language, right? If we can't talk, we do sign language. But sharing, yeah, having a voice, having a voice, Yogananda says the full potential of speech is a unique endowment bequeathed. Bequeathed. It's we've been bequeathed by God to have this ability of speech, my dears. So not only do we have that internal now action of right, how we can, just really hone in on our behavior with the sattvic austerities that we talked about last week, but now we can see what we can do to purify, amplify, bring the Om in, and be so grateful that we have this ability for speech. The disciplined austerity of speech, Yogananda goes on to say, the disciplined, everything's disciplined if you're going to make some changes in this world, right? The disciplined austerity of speech is best supported by the inner perception of truth. So the Om is awesome, the sound of Om, which is truth itself, God active in all creation as joy, as happiness, as bliss, right? That's pretty cool. But now our speech can house the vibration and the inner perception of truth. The voice can do that as well. That means we see no evil, we hear no evil, we taste no evil, we say no evil kind of idea, right? The disciplined austerity of speech is best supported by the inner perception of truth. So if you're, honest and truth, not revealing, as Yogananda says, your weaknesses and all that. No, he said, don't do that. You do that with God, because most humans will take that. They don't know how to take it. We don't know how to take it when someone starts confessing their sins or confessing their weaknesses. So he says, don't do it. You want to go to the inner source. That's what helps that behavior. Go to the inner source and have a talk out. Have a little downtime with the divine in your temple of stillness and silence. That will bring you the truth. And this combines with the truth. This is another one of those Yoganandas that you have to kind of think twice or three times to really get the gist of it. So not only do we have this ability to have the inner perception of truth, which is really going to enhance the power and the efficacy of speech and how beneficial it can be for not only the speaker, but the ones the listeners as well, obviously, right? But he says there's the inner perception of truth, and then through contact or communion with one's true self, So that's what meditation is, right? Communion, wouldn't you say? And contact with your true self, right? In Prince, Yogananda says the image of God within. Our true self is the image of God within, right? I think that's kind of we know this to a lesser or greater degree, that our true self will also bring you a tremendous ability for the right speech, the highest sattvic speech, right? So those words are permeated with something that would never ever hurt somebody, would never ever, because we're going to have to feel that hurt if we hurt someone with our speech, or even our thought of the speech. We're going to have to feel that, what they felt in that, when we go to see our review film at the end of this life. But this contact and communion with one's true self, the image of God within, in meditation, is also tied in with the right speech, the sattvic speech, the Sanskrit terminology that describes this practice. So here's what Sanskrit says about this practice that we're sharing right now, how we can improve the vibrations, the frequencies, the meanings of our speech, to get down to the truth, get down to this interconnecting to our higher self, right? All of that. The Sanskrit terminology that describes this practice is sometimes translated as, and this is Burns, the repetition of scripture to oneself. Ryan G. The repetition of scripture. As you notice, I repeat these lines over and over again for the most part, right? That's kind of the idea of what the Sanskrit terminology is about the practice that we're talking about as relating to speech. It's the repetition of scripture. So this is what we're doing. Yogananda's words, we could say, is scripture, is our scripture, the Bhagavad Gita scripture, the repetition of scripture to oneself. It's the constant practice of the repetition of scripture to oneself. In other words, positive self-talk. Put it another way. Hello, Mary. So happy you made it. Welcome. We're talking about developing sattvic speech. Quite a little paragraph here on page 1000, chapter 17. God talks to Arjuna. So let's repeat as often as we want to. Let's become divine human parrots, so to speak, and only repeat to ourselves those empowering thoughts, those empowering truths, those empowering, the intuitions that come from this interiorization of ourselves in meditation. Best place to feel that. So the repetition of scripture to oneself. One method of meditation on truth applies the principle of affirmation. Right? Yogananda has a book on affirmations. Scientific Healing Affirmations, it's called. So one method of meditation on truth applies the principle of affirmation. Constant positive self-talk. Either way you want to look at it, any way you want to frame it up, my dears, God doesn't really care. He's just watching your heart. He's just watching the content of your heart. He's just very sensitive to whether there is love going on, and if not, what the hell is going on? But he wants to just know that there's some love going on, and if not, he's going to help you out to get some love percolating, because that's the highest principle of this universe, is love, divine love. So by concentrated repetition of truth verbally, because in his affirmation you say it verbally, and then mentally, it fills the conscious mind and penetrates into the subconscious. And when it goes deeper still, it penetrates into the superconsciousness, the soul. The truth becomes an actual experience. The truth becomes an actual experience of knowing. and returns to the conscious mind as realization. So this just basically gets us into more self-realization and the fellowship that we all can feel together as we vibrate in the same frequency, as we we stay as the rainbow tribe, is what I say in our meditation morning, you know alertness to what God is trying to give to us to make our day. Go ahead and make your day, he says. Let's go ahead and make your day. So this is Yogananda says, through regular communication with our true self, through regular communication, positive self-talk, or however you want to word it or look at it, through regular communication, positive self-talk with our true self, the yogi becomes increasingly at one with truth. Her speech becomes an apt instrument. Her and his speech becomes an apt instrument of his inner divine perceptions. Wow, I love that. When someone's talking and they're talking from a deep place, like that, like what we're Yogananda is suggesting here in this part of the Gita, chapter 17, that we have regular communication, positive self-talk with our true self, the yogi becomes increasingly at one with truth when we are doing that. His and her speech becomes an apt instrument of her inner divine perceptions. See, that's missing in our world. Is that when we're in conversation, it's not just how's the weather, how are the kids, da 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 da. That's fine. Get it, It's kind of human after all. But what about when your languaging is without any kind of ego, is about divine perceptions? It just comes through naturally, organically, because of your constant positive self-talk to yourself, your constant repetition of what's holy, what's sattvic, right? Does this make some sense for this idea of spiritualizing our speech? His words or her words are truthful and wise, pleasant and beneficial. With all this that we've been sharing as practices for right speech, because there's right speech, there's right action, there's right meditation, there's right behavior. What did Sri Yukteswar say to Yogananda? Learn to behave. Yogananda was a guru. Learn to behave. Before he went to America, learn to behave. I think that goes for all of us. Learn to behave so that our words are truthful and wise, pleasant and beneficial, in engendering peace, happiness, understanding, and well-being, and are devoid of unnecessary, harsh, or irritating connotation. I just read where dogs are highly sensitive to loud speech, or when you're yelling. That's not their favorite thing. Not their favorite thing at all. I don't think humans like it either, right? So we want to engender the happiness, understanding, well-being, devoid of unnecessarily harsh or irritating connotations. Our voice, we want to be kind, a kind voice. There's nothing like a kind voice. Yeah. My dogs trespassed a little on a lawn around here, and a lady came out and said, "We have cameras." And then she didn't like explode or make me wrong or the dog wrong or go into a whole soliloquy on get off my property kind of thing. She was so sweet. She was so sweet. Yeah. So there's really no excuse not to have kind speech. Even when the dog goes potty on your lawn, right? But we want our voice to be kind. Even when it's forceful, it can still be kind. and admits no taint of caustic innotations. There's no, we feel it, we feel everything, my dears. We feel that's why sometimes we don't want to be around somebody. Sometimes we want to be around somebody. We feel it all. But God is the most sensitive, and He just wants, and He is love itself. She is love itself. She is kindness itself. So we want to mirror as best we can in these human forms the God part of us, which is 100%. We're 100% proof, God proof, my dears. So mental austerity is the practice of maintaining. See, this is another one of those guru quotes that you got to maybe think twice about. Mental austerity is the practice of maintaining. Here's the word that we're all seeking: tranquility. Mental austerity is the practice of maintaining tranquility. Do you all know what that means? You could probably guess. Make up your own definition of tranquility, right? It's a beautiful word. Mental austerity is the practice of maintaining tranquility. That means you're always at peace within yourself. You're dialed in. You're connected. You have a lot of help. Let's put it that way. You're ceaselessly asking for help. You ceaselessly know that it's the grace, the amazing grace that gets us to change anything from human to a higher state. Anything is divine grace. So let's don't take it too personal. Anything. Right? God's in charge. God is the doer. Divine Mother's a doer. So mental austerity is practice of maintaining tranquility throughout the entire inner being, Narayan and Lisa and Jen. Throughout your entire inner being, maintaining tranquility. Throughout your entire inner being. Wow, powerful, right? Throughout your entire inner being. That's why we call this title Blissful Inner Calm. The wondrous absolute quietude of a blissful inner calm, Yogananda is going to say coming up here. I just made our title of the stream this morning, Blissful Inner Calm. Kind of mirrors, doesn't it, that we want to maintain tranquility throughout the entire inner being so that we can be in a blissful inner calm. How's that? These are all words of Yogananda through his speech. Through his speech. Tranquility in our entire inner being. Entire inner being. That means from toes to head, inside and out, you're very tranquil. You relax, right? It's like Yogananda's recharging exercises when you do that. And when you're really paying attention, tense with will and relax and feel. It's one of the verses he says. Bring that energy in, tense it, tense the body, bring that cosmic energy in, and then let go of that tension, relax and feel. Tense with will and relax and feel. I just saw a quote from him that when we're not willing and we're just kind of not up or enthusiastic about doing something and it's the right thing to do, but we don't do it, our energy goes drops. But when you are enthusiastic and you're willing from the beginning, he says, Yogananda, that you bring in the greatest supply of prana. When you're willing, and enthused, you bring in the greatest supply of energy. So if you're ever looking for a little extra dab of energy, my dears, be super enthusiastic. No matter what it is, where you are, being super enthusiastic about it and willing willing to what? Willing to work on your behavior on the inside, perhaps, right? To have some more positive self-talk to your true self, things like that. So the yogi attains the acme of this tranquility throughout the entire inner being. That the yogi attains the acme of this state in ecstatic meditation, wherein the habitual restless mind is made wholly placid, contented, and crystal clear in its perception. One day, one day, right? Wholly placid, we will feel contented and crystal clear in the perceptions of our meditations. The usually dominant senses of the ego are completely restrained and under the control of the self. The usually dominant senses of the ego are completely restrained and under the control of the self, thereby affecting an evenness of the heart. So when we can have that self-control and over the dominant senses of the ego and completely restrain them and under the control of this self, affect an evenness of heart or feeling, an evenness of heart and feeling. That's tranquil. Good definition of tranquility. It's an evenness of heart and feeling, isn't it? It's a good definition for tranquility, that we have an evenness, even keel in heart and feeling, and the stilling of ruffling, you're ruffling our feathers, or ruffling your emotions. The stilling of ruffling emotions. Feathers getting it. The feathers are getting up, right? Free from the constant pronouncements of the senses and the chatter. Can you imagine the noise of the pronouncements, the chatter of the restless thoughts, the constant pronouncements of the senses and the chatter of the restless thought? The yogi bask instead in the wondrous absolute quietude, and here's our title, of a blissful inner calm. A blissful inner calm, my dears. Just be with that. I mean, we're taking in these vibrations, alive and well in this. God talks to Arjuna, Yogananda's commentary to the Bhagavad Gita. From the constant pronouncements of senses and chatter of restless thought, the yogi gets a time out and bask in the wondrous absolute quietude. Imagine we're talking about our entire being, from toes to the top of our head. How would that feel? How would that feel? It's like going into a beautiful, crystal clear, no one's around, jacuzzi. And it's just, your whole body goes, ah, right? Maybe you were cold. You went in, it's just the right temperature, everything's perfect, and you just go, ah, everything relaxes. Can you imagine when no more constant pronouncements of the senses and chatter of restless thoughts are hanging around, and you are basking in that jacuzzi? You're basking, in this case, in the wondrous absolute quietude of a blissful inner calm. This is important to remember. We're so apt most of the time to be focusing on the things that are hurting us, that are not in tune necessarily, harmonic, whatever, that are just, that we focus on those kinds of things, that we're restless, that restless monkey mind. So it's nice that we consider a wondrous absolute quietude in our entire inner being, of a blissful inner calm. Yogananda goes on to say that gradually purifies your whole nature. It purifies your whole nature. No germs. No germs can get in if you are in a high state of frequency. Really, it can't withstand that. It can't withstand that. So we get the whole purification of our nature, of our whole nature. Such was the calmness of my Guru, Yogananda goes on to say, Sri Yukteswar, that you could not begin to measure his depth. Tomes, Tomes. What is his depths? What does that mean? Sri Yukteswar's measure of his depths. It's tomes of wisdom. Tomes of wisdom were written on the immaculate serenity of his consciousness. The immaculate serenity of his consciousness. Really? That's one of our gurus? I mean, if you are in that world of being a devotee of Yogananda, great. Can you imagine just being around Sri Yukteswar, even for 5 minutes, to experience the measure of his depth and the tomes of wisdom were written on the immaculate serenity of his consciousness. Wow. Wow. So Yogananda goes on to say, the practitioner of sattvic mental austerity, which is holding beautiful thoughts, mental, now strives for continuity, continuity, the practitioner of sattvic mental austerity, because this all leads to sattvic mental activity. So your mind is in the highest frequency you can have it in. The practitioner of sattvic mental austerity strives for continuity of this inner discipline in activity as well as in meditation. I guess all the time, my dears. I guess if it's who you are, is who you are, and you are child of God, you are the divine beloved inside, the divine indweller, right? If you're all that, yeah, it would make sense that we would strive for continuity of this inner discipline and activity as well as meditation. They work both together, hand in hand. By maintaining a mental calm, Yogananda goes on to say, in a cheerful, positive attitude. There's our positive self-talk. Right there. He says it. By maintaining a mental calm and a cheerful, positive attitude. There it is. There's our positive self-talk. A cheerful, positive attitude. A mental calm and a cheerful, positive attitude. She and he enjoys clarity of thought and perception with an inner evenness of heart. Remember we talked about that, evenness of heart and feeling, and with an inner evenness of heart in which his and her feelings are free from the aggressiveness of likes and dislikes and expectations. The twin snares, Yogananda calls them, the twin snares, likes and dislikes. You can you can blow up your system either going overboard with any one of those. You're obsessed with the likes and you are depressed with the dislikes. Can really disrupt this whole system. You know, free from those, though, aggressiveness of likes and dislikes and expectation, we are kindly under all circumstances. We are kindly under all circumstances, no matter what conditions abide in our external surroundings. We retain a placid inner stillness. Mauna, M-A-U-N-A, M-A-U-N-A, Mauna, Mauna. I don't know if I'm saying it right. A placid, but it means placid inner stillness, my dears. No cunning wiles of sensory temptation can sway the discriminative determinations No cunning wiles of sensory temptation, wow, can sway the discriminative determinations. Two words put together. Never heard them like that. Discriminative determinations of his self control. There arises a divine purity in all of her motivations and his motivations. There arises a divine purity. Gosh, in a in a in a chaotic world, in where there is the dark side in an Armageddon battle with the light side, that we are being asked as the purpose of our lives to have such self mastery that there arises a divine purity in all of our motivations. Wow. This is why we need the amazing grace. This is a big order. This is a tall order the divine has for us as our divine purpose here on the planet. There arises divine purity in all of our motivations, for they issue from the virtues that have become the aggregate. Those discriminative determinations of self-control, my dears, so no cunning wiles of sensory temptation can sway the discriminative determinations of your self-control. There arises the divine purity in all your motivations. How's that? This is why there's so few that want to read this Gita. Because you just say, that, come on, this is just way out of my league. Which is just another excuse to be human, which is fine, because we're going to learn one way or the other, right? There arises a divine purity in all of our motivations, for they issue from the virtues that have become an aggregate in our character. An aggregate. They all gathered together as an aggregate. All the virtues in our character. Wow. Oh, this next sentence is that kind of what I felt. And I didn't know it was coming right here. Along with all that is asked of the devotee. I was just feeling that. That's why I said those things. Really? How are we going to pull this off? Right? Along with all that is asked of the devotee. If he and she would attain the divine goal. I'm glad Yogananda is talking about this. He and she is reminded repeatedly, if you're one that wants to attain the divine goal, she and he is reminded repeatedly that her and his endeavors are to be without desire for their fruits or results. See, that was one of these verses. See, we're kind of meshing together these verses 14 to 17. And verse 17 is that the practice that sattvic in its nature, the threefold penance, I guess, what yoga it says here. Sattvic in its nature is practiced by persevering men and women possessing great devotion and who desire no fruit of actions. That's why we're reading about that on page 1001. There arises the divine purity in all motivations, for they issues from that virtues that have become aggregate of our character. And then Yogananda goes on, but it's along with all that is asked of the devotee, if he would attain the divine goal, he's reminded repeatedly that his endeavors are to be without desire for their fruits or results. A hugest point, I think, in the Gita's teachings and Yogananda's teachings any true teachings is that in the Buddhist teachings is to remind ourselves that our endeavors are to be without desire for their fruits or results. That's so hard, but so worth it. Hard in this sense is really something that is worth it. Okay, so it has a big benefit, a big bonus benefit. He and she readily comprehends the law of karma and how attachments to the attainment of something, even virtuous ones, can bind the soul in a sphere of manifestation, in other words, reincarnation. But sometimes a devotee is confused in trying to understand why she should not concentrate even on the transcendent fruits, right? You have a great meditation. You're you're skipping along. You're feeling wonderful, Everything's coming your way. And you think, man, wow, I deserve this. But even on those transcendent fruits of meditated actions, why we should not concentrate even on those transcendent fruits of meditation actions, God realization. And that's where we sometimes get way off and we start getting bummed about our meditation and making ourselves wrong or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Let me just finish this little paragraph here. Longing for the results of worldly action keeps a man entangled, a woman entangled in the net of material perceptions. Therefore, meditation with a deep desire to obtain divine communion is necessary in the beginning to offset desires for the material fruits of worldly activities. Therefore, meditation with a deep desire to obtain divine communion is necessary in the beginning to offset all these desires that we have for material fruits of worldly activities. So we're going to start here, and Yogananda is going to warn us about looking for those fruits in meditation too. So today is the 24th. Okay. All right, my dears. Well, thank you. Thank you for putting on that listening, intuitive part of you that just grabbed in this grab bag of truth, this grab bag of Yogananda's commentary, this grab bag, just whatever was this the right thing for you to carry with you today. Whatever just kind of staying with you right now, right? You can walk away feeling like you really scored. Always amazing. Thank you, Narayan Ji. Yeah, I think so too. Because of grace. Because of grace. Because you got up, you showed up, and you did this to become enlightened. And not by the sense of how people would think enlightened. I'm going to be enlightened. No. Sending tons of love from Bellingham. You got it. You got it. Rookie. All our love. Constantly. Endlessly. We're all the rainbow tribe. Denny. Yeah, Denny. It's so good to see you. I feel like I can say that because I'm seeing your name and it's just like, out of everything that we could be doing and all the thoughts that we could be thinking, whatever, we all combined this morning and just got into an energy, a vibration that just brought us all together in harmony and in love for God. So, wow. Wow, I bow. Thank you, my dears. Have a beautiful rest of your day. See some of you on the next reel. And we'll take it from there. You come to the meditation. We'll see what we have going on there. Don't quite know yet what do, but something will be said. Love you. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Thanks again for coming on to the Gita Express. All aboard Gita Express to the infinite bliss unmanifest. All aboard. Namaste.